Okay, so we're going to start part one of our modular building tutorial here, and I'll be honest, there's a lot of technical stuff to this, so that's why I'm recording it as a video. And Unreal 4 has changed a lot of things since UDK 3, and so there may be some stumbles along the way here, but let's just see if we can walk through this together. So the thing, what I want to show you just kind of roughly what it is we're working toward. Right now we have a plane in here, and so what we want is if I have the grid set to 5, or even if I had it probably set to 10, what I want is to be able to duplicate this object and drag it to where it's constantly lining up perfectly, right? And so to do that, we have to make these at a very precise level. That way, when we're running around in here, this stuff feels right. Now, the thing to recognize about this is that this is going to require us to know a lot, or to do a lot of thinking about Unreal's conversions of units, right? And so that was just a plane I exported out of Maya, but let's look at how Maya and Unreal look at a unit. So in previous versions of Unreal 3, it was one Unreal unit was 2 centimeters, and so most of you probably have been working in that mindset for a while, but now it's different. One Unreal unit is 1 centimeter, which is actually nice, because that's what it is in Maya as well. One Maya unit is 1 centimeter. And so if I go in here, I have interactive creation turned off, and I just create a NURBS cylinder. I'm sorry, I meant to do a NURBS cube. I didn't actually mean to do NURBS at all. I meant a polycube, right? It's going to create it 1 unit by 1 unit by 1 unit, right? And if I were to export that out, that would go into Unreal as a 1 centimeter box, right? And so what we need to do is a little bit of math, because really we don't think in terms of centimeters, and centimeters don't divide up evenly by 10, right? And that's how Unreal wants us to think of the grid that is in here. So even though it knows that the Unreal units is 1 centimeter, it's wanting to think of this in sort of a metric power of 10 system, right? Okay, so just understand that. Right now, when we look at Maya's grid, it's thinking of it in terms of a centimeter, right? So we can, if you're more comfortable with metric, that's great, but right now what we're going to do is we're going to start coming up with some ways to make sure that our units inside of Maya will match the grid that is in Unreal. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do some math, and I know all of you love math, but let's think in terms of feet for a little while here. So 1 foot equals 30.48 centimeters, right? And so I know that when I created this box, it was 1 centimeter by 1 centimeter, but if I wanted it to be a foot tall, I could do 30.48. And so now this box is 1 foot tall by 1 foot tall, right? And you can see that in comparison to centimeters. Is that right now? I'm sorry, let me go back and make sure. So yeah, 30.48, right? And so if I were to export this, file, export selection into Unreal, I'm going to do it as plain test 2. And don't worry too much about this, but just so you can see what's going on. Import. And I were to drag this box in here. If we walk around, this should seem like a 1 foot tall box. Okay, so that seems about right. All right, so let's see how we make this a box that's about the size of our character. Okay, so let's go back in here, and so 30.48, and that's going to be our y-axis for the height, right? So we got 30.48 for that. If I did the math on that, like what is the height of 6 feet, it's 182.88, right? So I can just grab that number, put that into there. And so now what we actually have is a box that's about 6 feet tall. And so that's maybe the average height of a human, we'll say. So put that back there. We're just going to go ahead and export this out to Unreal, and I'll just do this as plain test 3. And so if I import, I keep doing that wrong, import plain test 3, we can look at it, bring it up here. See, now it's not going to snap perfectly because we're doing this in centimeters, but this is about the right height, and I hit play and walk around in here. You'll see that that's about as high as my character. Okay, so we did that predominantly just so we can have a reference inside of Maya of about how tall a human is. Okay, and so I'm just going to move this kind of out to the side here. Now I'm going to show you a couple of shortcut keys that are going to come in handy again later, but if I hold down D, if I hold down D, you'll see that my locator, as I hold it down, switches to the pivot point option, right? So it's the same as hitting insert, it switches to pivot point, but if I hold down D and then hold down V, I can drag my pivot point to the bottom corner. Right. And so what this does is this allows me to snap this. I'm back at my origin here. So if I hold down X, I can snap that at the origin, right? And so now I just know that my object is ground level here. And I'm just going to kind of scoot that out of the way now, just so I have it. Because what we're going to look at now is how to set up our grid. So what we want right now, our grid is set up to, show us what 1 centimeter looks like, right? But we don't want to see what 1 centimeter looks like. We want to see something that maybe is a little bit more appropriate to us, right? Like if we wanted to figure out what 1 foot looked like on this grid, then we can change the way we display this grid. So if we go to grid, go to our options, right now it's showing 12 units, 5 units, and it's subdividing it by 5 because it's metric. But we know that what we really want to be able to see is what one foot looks like. And since we did the math earlier, we know that 1 foot is 30.48 centimeters, right? So what I could say is, if I did 30.48 and then 30.48 and set this to 1 and hit apply, we'll see that's 1 foot by 1 foot by 1 foot, and that makes sense, right? That's about how big. Let's snap back to the center of our grid, and that's what that looks like, right? So that feels appropriate. But this isn't really what we would want. Like if we were working in feet and we needed to pay attention to the size of feet, maybe what we would want is to be able to see 16 of these, right? Or 20 of them, however wide you want to see that. And so what we have to do is some math then. So if I pull up my calculator and I do 30.48 times 20, I get 609. Or just because we like to usually keep this in multiples of 2 if we can, we could do 30.48 times 16. We got 487.68. So if I go 487.68, put that in there as well, and hit apply, you're going to see we get this really giant one, because that's basically what 16 feet looks like. So if I divide that by 16, you'll see that we have increments of 16. Or if I divided it by 32, you get to see what a half of a foot looks like. Okay, so this is a way we can just adjust our grid to see what it would look like in feet. Now, again, though, this is really nice, and this is something that's very handy when we need to figure out how big our character is or how big our sword is. But what it's not good for is when I need to snap to stuff. And so the reason for that is because if you look at, again, if we look at our grid settings, this is well, actually, let's just look at this number, right? 30.48 is not a multiple of 10, right? And so if we need to snap to Unreal's grid here, we need to be working off a multiple of 10. Now, we're not going to be changing how Maya thinks of a foot, or how Maya thinks of a centimeter. What we're going to change is we're going to change how we visualize the grid in this world that is in centimeters, right? And so let's say if I want to divide this up, let's do 160 and 160, because then what we get is each of these little increments in here is actually a each of these little increments here is actually a point on the grid that is inside of Unreal. Okay, so this is kind of small though for what we're wanting. We're actually going to want a really big version of this, and so what I'm going to set my grid to in this case is a power of 10 of that, I believe. Right, 1600 by 1600, and hit apply. And what you'll see is I'm getting these very large units, and what this is probably equating to is a setting of, I think, probably 100 units inside of Unreal, right? So I know this is kind of hard to understand, so just bear with me. I'm going to do one more thing. I'm going to divide that, or no, I'm going to go ahead and divide that another increment. So basically what we're getting is every 50th of a unit. Okay, so if I wanted to move something every 50th of a unit, I can change that inside of Unreal right here, set grid size to 50, and I believe that that's kind of what we have right now, is we have the grid size kind of thinking about it in that terms. We'll check that out later and make sure, but the biggest thing is we know that this is the size of a person, and then this is sort of the size of the grid that we'll be working on in Unreal. So I'm going to go ahead and hit stop now, and we'll move into the next video here in just a second to explain what we're going to be doing in terms of making some modular building pieces that we can use inside of Unreal. So talk to you soon.